Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I've seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and this is my first time experiencing all these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 2, Episode 20, Cats in the Cradle. Original air date is April 25th, 2002. Director is Richard J. Lewis. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker and Christy Dobkin. And we start this episode with at least a scene of the Vegas Strip.
Just the one.
Okay, I was going to say, I think it's a single scene of the Vegas Strip. And before we continue, Nick, what is our Vegas score for today's episode?
Oh, I did it wrong. I was just telling Lauren that I forgot to write it down, and then I had to redo it. And I just glanced over and realized I wrote it wrong.
You're like, wait a second, this is not. This is
I was
not
like, that's
correct.
way too high. It's very low. It's 15. So we have one. Okay. I'm 99% certain there's one other scene. I don't know why I didn't write it down in the middle for about 3 seconds, which I think I didn't write it down because I think I missed it. And the first watch, and on the rewatch, I was like, oh, there's a scene.
You're like, wait,
I think I thought I had it, and I just forgot about it. But I guess I don't know. So yeah, little either way, it's a low score. It would be astoundingly low if it were not for that extra scene. We'd be in the single digits, which we haven't.
I don't think we've ever.
We had a 0, didn't we?
Oh, we did have a 0.
Yeah, so
you're right. We did have a 0.
So it's hard to top that. That's almost in a category on its own.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty low Vegas score, and even like there isn't really a scene anywhere near the Vegas Strip.
No, this is the backdrop is definitely not Vegas-y in this episode by any stretch of the imagination. So we have the one shot of the Vegas Strip. We then hear cats meowing. We transition to like a cat's eye view of like a neighborhood, like kind of winding through a neighborhood. And then we go into a house and there's cats feasting on a deceased elderly woman. And this is my fake spot the guest star, because I definitely thought that the elderly woman was an actor from the Chronicles of Riddick. And so I went on the IMDb and I was like, this is totally her. It's not. It is not her. So just kidding.
I have some fun spot the guest stars in this episode.
I think 3 spot the guest stars in this episode.
Okay. There's a spot the guest star that I was curious if you would have that I think is a legit spot the guest star.
Okay.
But like I looked at it, I was like, I mean, I watched like a show that they were in and I was like, but I don't really remember them. They just look so familiar. So that might not even be the same person, but
maybe
there's some good spot the guest. There's at least 2. I have at least 2 solid spot the guest stars.
Okay.
So
I have 3. So then Grissom and Catherine arrive on scene. O'Reilly's already there. He kind of gives them the debrief on what's going on. We learn that the victim is Ruth Elliott, and I had to laugh. I think it's been a while since we've had this issue at CSI, but they say that Ruth Elliott is 80 years old. This actress is not 80 years old.
Oh, yeah. No. Do you know how old she is in the episode?
No. Well, the character is supposed to be 80 years old. I have no idea how old the actress actually was in this episode, but she was not 80 years old.
She would be 82 if she were alive today. Which
might be. So then that was 20 years ago. So she was like 62 years old.
It's good hair and makeup.
Oh my God. No, it's not, because she didn't look 80.
Oh, she looks really old in some of the flashbacks.
Oh, I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think so. But all I could think of is in the plane episode, the guy that passed away, they said he was, I can't remember what age he said he was, but it made like no sense to how old the actor was. Like the ages did not.
Oh, we've had some real mismatches.
We've had some real mismatches, and I was like, oh, here we go, another bit of a mismatch. But we learn that the victim was found because her mail started piling up, so the mailman ended up dialing 911. They go inside the house. It reeks of male cat urine, which in Catherine's opinion smells worse than decomp. We also learn in this scene that David is allergic to cats, so he tells them what he can tell them, and he's like, I gotta go take a Benadryl.
I wonder if the actor is allergic to cats, because he's also not in this episode ever again.
Never. I wonder if there's like something in his contract. I feel like the last few episodes he has made like random few second appearances, so like he's a credit in the episode, but he doesn't have any significant role in the episode.
Yeah, it's not that they use him in lieu of anyone because Doc Robbins in the episode. They could have just cut that out. So it could be. I keep forgetting to check to see if he's a friend of like related to somebody, because it seems very like, here, let's throw him a quick scene so that we can get him billing or something. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I don't quite.
Insurance.
Yeah, he ends up. We'll see more of David, but David leaves. Grissom is examining the body and finds a very deep wound track and surmises that the victim has been stabbed, which transitions us to credits. We return back to the house. Catherine is taking imprints on the floor from what she believes to be like a high heeled shoe. Warwick enters. He's like, I'm going to go work the bedroom. In the bedroom, he finds a safe that has been very obviously tampered with. It is empty, so he begins processing
It's
that.
like there's like torch marks.
Yeah, like I mean, it's been obviously accessed in a means not just knowing the combination. And Grissom and Catherine are still in the house. They are checking the knives, but the knives are all clean. Like they're not reacting to show that they haven't blood on them. We leave this crime scene behind. We follow Nick and Sarah there with Jim Brass, and we learn that there has been an explosion, and that currently the only victim of the explosion is the Beamer.
Yes.
That is the car that exploded. We do see the intended victim, a Marcy Tobin, and this is one of my spot the guest stars.
So, okay, yeah. So this is the person who, I swear to God, like I was like, so I want to know, where do you know Marcy from?
So I know her primarily from, so this is Diane Farr.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say I just saw her in an episode of Grey's Anatomy, but that wasn't it. Like when I saw her in Grey's Anatomy, I was like, oh, I know her. What do I know her from? It took me. She has a pretty solid credit list on IMDb, so it took me some time. And then when I saw the credit, I was like, yes, that is 100%. She played Amy DeLuca on the TV show Roswell.
Okay, I never watched Roswell,
and that's where I know her from.
I have seen every episode of Rescue Me, of which she's credited in 13 episodes or something.
Oh, so that's probably where you know her from then.
It's the Boston show with Dennis Leary. Well, I guess it's based out of New York, but has a lot of Boston people in it. I think she might be from the Boston area. I didn't look it up, or she's not Boston.
She was born in New York, Manhattan.
Okay, yeah,
New York City. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because her accent is very Northeast, and I was like, I've seen this person and stuff. Her mannerisms are very specific.
Yes, they are.
And her character is really funny, especially on the second watch through when you have a little more context. But yeah, this was the person I went and looked at her IMDb and went, yeah, no, I don't. I watched that show. I don't remember anything about that show. I watched it when it was on. I never watched it a second time.
Yep.
I know I saw every episode, or at least of the first season. It got canceled, and that was, I never really watched it again. But yeah, it's funny that it was your person, because there's a couple other people who look kind of familiar, so I thought like it could be anybody.
I have two more spot the guest stars on my list.
One of them is for sure one of mine.
I guess we'll find out.
It's a huge. I think it's not as big as like a Jeremy Renner, but this is a person who's been in a billion things. So.
Oh, I feel like it might not be the same person.
Oh, well, okay, we'll find out.
We'll find out. Okay. I like it. I like it when we don't have the same ones.
I like it when we find different things.
Yeah.
I also like to thank our audience if you're at home, and please, like, I think I want more people to come up and be like, hey, oh yeah, or post online like, oh yeah, here's the spot the guest star I had for this episode.
Yes, if we missed them, feel free to let us know who we missed. We're happy to.
I'm trying not to like research people that much if I don't know them, because I want to leave that door. I want to leave that unspoken.
Yeah.
Make a comment, something.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely feel free to let us know. So Sarah talks to Marcy Tobin, and she's just asking about her husband at this point. She just like wants to know. She's like, my husband's on his way. He's going to be coming. Where's my husband? Jim Brass is talking to the mechanic, and we're kind of like flipping between these two scenes. And as we're doing so, we're getting a reenactment of the explosion. So we're like hearing the mechanics and Marcy Tobin's stories combining into like a single story. And then we're seeing the reenactment of that, which is her like pulling in, complaining that her car is making a noise. He pops the trunk. He sees the bomb. They run. Car explodes. So
I would like to say that these, spoiler alert, these people go through all these elaborate hoops
yes,
to set a narrative,
mm-hmm.
and then they took no they had no collaboration or like go time when it came to what actually happened before that bomb went up.
No.
And all I could think is like, you guys are real dumb and real smart at the same time.
Yes. I mean, you can be both of those. You can be real smart about some things and real dumb about other things.
They check those boxes.
Yes, they do.
It's like, oh, that's really clever. That's really dumb. You would have got away with it if it weren't for yourself.
For yourself. Nick is at the car during this, though, and he realizes that the explosion blew right back to the driver. So this was a targeted placement. Like, this bomb was intended to cause harm to the driver of the vehicle.
Maybe. It could have been random luck that they put it there.
Possibly. But at the moment, this is the theory that is being developed. Grissom and Catherine are then with Doc Robbins. We learn that their victim died of cardiac trauma brought on by the stabbing. We also learn that she has a staph infection, which Doc Robbins is clear to be like, this might hold no weight in your case. You know, this might not mean anything to you. Spoiler alert, it means something. That's why I'm mentioning it now. She has a staph infection.
It always means something. And they talk about the wound in the scene as well with the substance. Like they say it's slimy.
They say it's slimy. Yes. This is where they collect the substance from the wound.
On second watch through, this scene is hilarious because no piece of evidence that they gathered or looked at in the entire crime scene was relevant. Almost everything Doc Robbins said is super important.
Very important. Episode. Doc Robbins is clutch in this episode, and he doesn't even know it. They don't give him credit at the end. We stay with this storyline as Grissom, Catherine, and Jim Brass are talking to a mom and two girls, and this is my second spot. The guest star. One of the girls, not the girl, but the other one, Jackie, is a one Jeanette McCurdy, and I know her as Sam Puckett from iCarly. Okay. And I only know that because he's not little now, and hopefully he doesn't listen to this podcast, but my once little cousin, I say little in the sense that he's much younger than I am, but my little cousin had a crush on her.
Oh.
And so that's like the only
character in that show, right?
Yeah, she's not the main character, but she's like the secondary main character essentially in the show. So that's like the only reason I know her is because he had a major old crush on her. Yeah. And so then as soon as this episode popped up, I was like, wait a second. I was like, I know her.
So what was interesting is that she has a very adult picture on IMDb.
Yes.
And I thought it was another character, and I clicked on it and I saw like 93 episodes of iCarly, and I went, well, I don't know who this person is, but somebody who listens to this podcast
is going to know who this is. I know who this is. It's Jeanette McCurdy.
The mom was somebody who I also thought looked really familiar.
Oh, okay.
And then clicked on it, was like, nope, I don't know this person from anywhere. Like, they're in 5 episodes of Suits, and I actually am pretty sure
she's in 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine. So funny enough, she did actually look like a little bit familiar, but not enough for me to be like, yeah, I know her. But now that I know that she was in 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, if you haven't learned, audience, I'm a Trek nerd, so I if there's Trek related spot the guest stars, I usually pick them out.
Yeah. So she's in 5 episodes of Suits, which I watch, and based on her character's name, I know her character is related to other people.
Yeah.
So that's almost certainly why she looks familiar. And she's a couple other things, like she's in like 1 episode of something of a couple other things that I watched. But like even after seeing the character's name, I was like, nope, I don't know who this person is. I don't remember this character. So yeah, I think she's just been in a bunch of things. So that's another person. So what's interesting is like I was like writing down like, oh, do I know this person? I was like, I have like 2 different notations. I have one for I put a literal giant star on it. I'm like, I know this person. This is definitely a spot the guest star.
Yeah.
And then I put like 3 question marks with a little star next to it if I think this could be a spot the guest star. And then I get to the end of the episode and I think about that character again and think if I can guess it. And then when I go to IMDb to look up anybody who's real, I'll just check other people to see, do I know, was I right with this person, wrong with this person?
Yeah.
And so this one was like, no, I don't think so. But I have a lot of stars in my notes. So we're into 2 Spot the Guest Stars.
Yeah.
And neither of them are mine.
Oh, all right. Okay. Well, let's keep going. This is going to be really fun in editing for me when I have to put our Spot the Guest Star music underneath all of this. So they're talking with the mom and the 2 girls, and the girls end up saying that Mrs. Stein, another one of their neighbors, had an argument with the victim. She came out of the house angry. So they go back in the house. CSI steps away. O'Reilly's like, don't worry, I'll get a warrant for Mrs. Stein's shoes. Nick and Sarah are then at HQ. They're with the car. Nick finds an end cap and realizes that it was a pipe bomb. Like, that was the type of bomb used in this explosion. Sarah finds the grommet. It survived the blast. Jim Brass enters, and the company that the husband works for, the D in the name of the company, stands for demolition. So, they know how to blow things up. Wompity womp womp womp. We follow this thread. We go with Nick and Sarah to said company. They meet the husband. This is my 3rd spot.
Okay.
The guest star.
This is my 1st Spot the Guest Star. I hope it's the same reference, because
I don't think it is.
Oh wow.
Well, I have 2.
A very specific.
I have 2 references for him. One, so this is, apologies listeners, this is Steve Heitner. Heitner. So I know him from 2 things. One, he is in a very early episode of The X-Files.
Okay.
He is a pilot, and he's either a pilot or a scientist. I can't remember exactly what character he is, but he's in the episode where they like fly to the frozen tundra, and there's like weird worms infecting people and causing them to like kill one another. And then, funny enough, in connection with our other Spot the Guest Star, the other way I know him is he's also in the TV show Roswell, and he runs.
Oh, interesting.
He runs the UFO Museum. He's like the curator of the UFO Museum in the Roswell TV show. And not the new Roswell TV show, which is also very good. The original Roswell TV show that ran from 1999 onwards, I think. But that's where I know him from. Nick, where do you know him from?
I know him from Seinfeld. He plays a recurrent character named Eric Banya, who is another stand-up comic. And he's very famously in 2 episodes. One in which he gives Jerry a suit, and then he's supposed to pay him back, and it gives him a runaround, and he hates him. So he's like an early nemesis for Jerry and Jerry Seinfeld. Then he's in one of the most famous Jerry Seinfeld episodes of all time, the Soup Nazi episode. And he wants to like cut Jerry Seinfeld in line, and he won't let him cut him. And I forget, there's a very famous quote that's in that episode. I remember, like, I even looked it up, and I should have written it down because I thought I would remember it, but for some reason I have no memory today. And but yeah, I think he says it's gold or something, but he's very animated and very like wide-eyed. And as soon as the husband started talking, I was like, I know this guy. But before the scene is over, I will have a 2nd Spot the Guest Star.
Ooh, okay, all right. So he admits that he like knows how to make a bomb. He's a very transparent individual, and he's like, yeah, I know how to make a bomb. Everyone here knows how to make a bomb. Her father comes over, and he wants to talk to the CSIs alone. So he basically like shushes husband away to talk to Nick and Sarah on his own.
And he's my 2nd Spot the Guest Star.
Woo! 2nd Spot the Guest Star.
So this is Ed Lautner.
Yes.
Lauder? I swear to God, Lauder. Yeah, Lauder. He's been in a million things.
I'm now looking on his IMDb. He has been in a million things.
So he's been in a million things. I'm going to give him credit for my favorite appearance of him, which is in Not Another Teen Movie. Which is like very
nice.
I was about 17 years old when that movie came out, and so I was very much in the demographic for it. I also worked at Blockbuster Video when that movie came out, and probably watched it 4 or 5 times that summer, renting it for free. But he's in a bunch of other things. He's also like a big like sort of classic actor. And
so funny enough,
I've definitely seen him in.
He was also in the episode of the X-Files. So
yes, he was in the X-Files. He's like the NASA. It's not the same episode, is it?
No, it is a different episode. That would be amazing. That would be Small World. But no, he's in a different. But it's still like one of the earlier episodes of the X-Files that he's in.
He's in a bunch of movies, largely in long movies. He's in the original Longest Yard movie, which is one of the big things that he was in, and they brought him back for the younger Longest Yard movie. And so I immediately also was like, the engine started to turn. It wasn't specifically at this scene, but the engine started to turn like, this is too big of an actor for him not to be important. Yeah. And so very shortly, I have a prediction coming up that is fed by, at least partially by his notoriety, I guess is the word I would use.
Okay. So he's talking to Nick and Sarah, and he lets it slip that Marcy thinks that her husband is cheating. So just to throw that out there, Marcy thinks her husband is cheating. Nick then walks into Greg Sanders in the lab. They play Guess the Chemical game. The end of said game is that the chemical is dynamite and sawdust. Sarah, in the meantime, is processing the end cap. She gets a print. The print ends up matching the husband.
Which is like, I love they had this like really perfect print.
Perfect.
And they're only
no smudges, like clean lines, like chef's kiss.
And only one print. And their only explanation was that he inventories this cap.
So,
and then later on, we literally see another character touch it with their bare hands.
Yes. Yes. But those fingerprints don't count.
He could have easily just opened a box, closed the box, and put it on a shelf. And they happen to find the one. So he's framed in this episode. We've sort of danced
spoiler alert.
The spoiler.
He's
of
framed,
but,
or he's attempted to be framed. Like he's never fully a suspect. Like they think like, oh, maybe it's him. Like he's never booked for it or anything. But he is being framed. So we stay on the storyline.
Oh, I do have a pet peeve though.
Oh yeah.
Which is that I think Greg says there's only like 2 things you can make dynamite out of, and one of them is sawdust.
Mix with dynamite.
Yeah, or mix with nitroglycerin to make dynamite.
Yeah, sawdust and silica.
Yeah, I saw. Oh, did you just say silica? Never mind. That's fine.
I think he said silica.
Because the thing I was thinking of is silica. Because I've joked before of the stuff we put in our pool filter, technically made of silica. And I always joke it's both basically the same thing as like asbestos and the same thing as half of TNT.
Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure he said silica. I'm pretty sure he said sawdust.
Yeah, no, it's diatomaceous earth is silica shells of like ancient sea creatures.
Yes. Yeah.
They just dig it up off the seafloor and sell it to you. It's really good at filtering things. It's also probably can give you mesothelioma if you breathe it in too much.
Yeah, so don't do that, folks.
Or wear an N95 mask, which are really easy to come by these days.
Yeah, now it's no problem getting them. A few years ago, bit of a different story. Nick, Jim Brass, and Sarah are then with the husband in interrogation, and we learn through this, as Nick mentioned, that like he like inventories all the parts, so he touches all the parts. So like he's like, yeah, like my fingerprint could be on an end cap, like I processed those. And then he was also transporting dynamite, and one stick of dynamite was stolen from his car.
Yeah. This was the scene where I decided to make a prediction.
Okay.
I wrote down that the dad and daughter are in on it.
Oh, look at you.
Because I also wrote down it's a little too raff, which is a reference to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 movie, where they're bringing in is way too easy. Because they're like, oh, we get this piece of evidence, we get this piece of evidence, we get this fingerprint, we get this thing. Let's bring him in.
Wait a second.
I was like, this is too easy. This is not going to be. It's not this guy. So he's like, so somebody's setting him up, and I was like, who would set him up? It's like, well, dad clearly doesn't like him.
Right.
And I was like, the daughter has to be in on this because of the circumstances. I was like, it has to be a setup, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one's trying to kill her. He's obviously not going to risk his daughter's life because he clearly cares about his daughter.
Right.
So she has to be in on it. And I was like, daddy and daughter are in on it. I didn't really know if anyone else would be on it. I didn't foresee the spoiler alert mechanic being a part of the problem. Also, I literally didn't think he was part of the problem halfway through, like right before we found out he was, because I thought it was going to be some other random person who works at the shop.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
awfully
yeah.
circumstantial. And then I started to put it all together as they explained it. I went, oh.
You're like, oh, okay. This makes a little bit more sense now.
I understand. But yeah, they did a really bad job. They went all these hoops to make it seem so obvious that the husband did it. And then they didn't think to just, open the hood.
Yep. Again, you can be really smart in some ways and really, really dumb in others. The husband is adamant that he's not having an affair. He's like, I have an ulcer. I don't I don't need any more stress in my life. I'm not having an affair.
His defense is not believable, first off. They
No.
let him go too. I mean, they don't really get off his case for a while, but
no.
They gotta let him go too easily.
Yeah, they follow up with him though. He thinks one of his theories is that she might have been targeted because she handles the payroll of the company and she can be really stingy, with paying people out. And so he's leaning towards that being why she might have been targeted by this pipe bomb.
Brasco's like, well, point us out at somebody else. He's like, well, maybe anyone. She screws over everyone on payroll, so everybody hates her.
Yeah. We return to the other storyline. Catherine arrives at Debbie Stein's house, gets her shoes. Catherine and Warwick are then processing said shoes. They find a match.
She has so many shoes.
I mean, I have a lot of shoes, so...
Well, she has so many high heels.
Well, if those are the shoes you wear, and I know women that those are the shoes they wear, they have a lot of them. Grissom and Catherine are with Mrs. Stein in interrogation. We learn that she did go to the victim's house. She went there to basically plead with her to find homes for some of the cats before she was then going to report her to animal control. But she notes that this confrontation happened about 6 days ago, where David put time of death in the last 2 to 3 days. So timelines are not currently matching up here. We leave the storyline for a bit. Nick is isolating the tool marks from the end cap. Sarah is there as he's working on it. They realize that the tool that made the marks is a vice grip, and they're both like, wow, we need warrants because we need to go get us some vice grips. Warwick and Catherine have a nice little walk and talk. We learn that Mrs. Stein's alibi checks out, so she did not, in fact, kill Ruth Elliott, but Warwick did get a print from the safe, and that print belongs to Tyler Elliott, the victim's son. So even though Warwick is the one who isolated this print, he's not in the next scene.
Nope. It's a very minimized Warwick episode.
Very minimized Warwick episode. We're not fans of that. So in the next scene, Catherine, Grissom, and O'Reilly are with the son, and he's just a very somber individual. I'm not sure if that's the best way to describe it, but he's just like, look, funerals are expensive. I'm broke. No one would come to the funeral anyway. And when they kind of push him on, well, what about the safe? He's like, she had no money. I broke open the safe because somehow a cat got locked in there.
Yeah, which I can imagine could happen. It clearly is over the top for the episode, but
a little, I think.
Yeah,
but it's fine.
This character is not about the guest star for you.
No.
He's also in 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Oh, is he really? That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. And then he's in nothing else, really, but he's a producer on 300 episodes of NCIS Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
So he's probably doing a bunch
of things.
Fine.
He's in The Unit, Jericho.
Well, make sure you're looking at his actor credits.
Oh, yeah, I am looking at his producer. You are correct. I apologize. I'm sorry for my dog screaming in the background. Yeah,
but he plays somebody named Biddle Coolidge on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not saying it's important. I was just.
Yeah, no, it just.
That was like one of the ones I was like, I wonder if that was because he reminds me. He looks like people. I feel like, and so I looked at his IMDb. He was one of my questionable spot the guest stars. Although he is in a movie I really like, The Last Castle. Again, I haven't seen that movie in 20 years, so I don't think it was that.
Yep. So we learned that she had no money. She left the house to a cat sanctuary, and that wraps up them pursuing Tyler Elliott as a suspect. Sarah then arrives to Marcy's house. Her and her husband are there, and they're, having some conversations, and Marcy seems upset that her father spoke about her relationship, and she's trying to play it down and say, like, look, like, every couple has their problems, this really isn't a big deal. We then return to Nick checking out the vice grip. Sarah enters. No matches. Like, no matches to any of the ones that they got from the company, none, and then doesn't match the one that they got from Marcy's house.
Their matchy is so different. I can't believe he did it.
The actual matchy, like when we get to the actual match scene.
No, the fake.
Oh,
this one. It's like really wide versus skinny versus like spaced out. I was like, you didn't have to take a mold to know this was not the right.
I mean, maybe legally they probably have to document it for court if necessary. So, having no matches from the vice grips, they return to the car and they ask the question, like, what, they found the clock. They know, like, a clock was attached to the grommet. But what started the clock? Like, something had to start the timer that then set off the bomb. So they both, after going through a checklist, land on, the hood release, right? Because that's, they said that she popped the hood and then they looked in and then they ran away. So they were like, the hood would make sense. But as they continue to investigate, they realized that the hood was down when the bomb exploded, which does not fit into the story narration that we have heard to date. But we leave that for a little while. We go to Grissom and Catherine. They enter the lab where Greg Sanders is. And for some reason, this is a minimal Warwick episode, which not a fan of. And then another horrible Greg Sanders episode for reasons completely unbeknownst to me. I feel like we're getting Greg Sanders from like last season randomly in this episode, and I don't understand why. So he's has taken gloves and made some sort of weird costume and is pretending to be a rock star, and he's talking in riddles. And finally, Catherine says, we don't have time for this. Please just give me the results. And that's when we learn that the slippery substance found in the wound tract of the victim is mineral oil. So then Catherine and Grissom return to the house. They're scanning for mineral oil. They're not finding anything, but a cat comes in, which is weird because they thought that animal control picked up all the cats. Grissom opts to follow the cat. The cat...
He follows the evidence, which I thought was a great line, a great callback.
Yes, he goes, I'm going to follow the evidence. Yes. So he says he's going to follow the evidence, aka the cat. And he follows the cat back to the house with the mom and the two girls. We learn that the cat is now called Rascal, and poor little Rascal has a wound. So after some convincing, they're able to, Catherine really is able to swab the wound. They don't want Grissom touching the cat, or at least the one girl, Jessica, does not want Grissom touching the cat. So Catherine swabs the cat. And once the family goes inside, Grissom and Catherine are talking, and we learn that he wanted to swab the cat because the cat might have a staph infection. So we might be able to connect the cat to the victim. Sarah and Nick are then with the mechanic. As they're talking to him a little bit, they end up spotting a vice grip, and then they use a piece of cheese that they fish out of the garbage to make an imprint of the vice grip.
Which, I mean... Did you not have an idea when you went to here that you would want to do this? I was really surprised, but I also just want to disagree with Sarah. Trash is not trash.
No, trash outside on the sidewalk on public property is trash is trash, but trash inside of somebody's private building is still private property.
Yeah, and so you actually removed property. You committed theft. I mean, it doesn't have a high value, but
no,
just saying.
But still, no. I thought the same thing. I was like, no, this is not trash. Is not where trash is very important.
So we can't take this vice grip, but we can steal this cheese.
But
also, you could have asked for the vice grip. You could have just asked the guy.
I think they thought that they were going to have to get a warrant, and they didn't want to have to do that, so they went the cheese route.
You didn't want to have to get a warrant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the weirdest. This is the weirdest scene. They just wanted to use cheese to make it
They
imprint.
just wanted a cheese.
Some guy had an idea in the writer's room, and they're like, "We're gonna make it happen.
We're gonna make it happen." So they just squeezed it into this episode. But I will say that the cheese imprint does give us a nice matchy, which I feel like we haven't had a solid matchy in a while. So we
An actual
see
match.
an actual match. So we get the cheese imprint next to the imprint of the tool marks pulled off of the end cap, and match.
And I assume they then go get a warrant and then get the actual vice grip to do a non biodegradable imprint for evidence.
One would think, but we don't really follow up on that. Instead, they took a print. Where did they get this print from? I'm trying to remember. The print was it on the vice grips?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So they would have to have got a warrant for the vice grips to take fingerprints.
Yeah, so they get prints from the vice grip, and it matches someone from the company.
Yeah, well,
guess which person from the company. Well, yes, they run it through the database, no matches, and then they run it. And then Sarah's like, hey, I'm going to run it against the like print samples we took from, the employees of the company. And then that's where we get a match, which brings us to Marcy. And she's in interrogation with Nick, Sarah, and Jim Brass. And guess what? She's the one who planted the bomb.
And she continues to be a complete moron.
She's like, oh, it's not a crime to build a bomb. And Nick is like, are you sure? Are you sure it's not a crime?
Jim Brass says your mechanic friend lawyered up. He says this to her.
Yes.
She doesn't think to ask for a lawyer herself.
Especially when we already sort of knew this, but it's further confirmed in this scene that her father paid off the mechanic like $50,000 to be, a collaborator in this crime. Your dad has plenty of money. It's not like you can't afford a decent lawyer. You can afford a decent lawyer, so get the good lawyer. Yeah, get the expensive lawyer that's
get your story straight with your conspiracy. She's just in belief that she's untouchable. The hubris, that's the word.
Yes.
She has such great hubris in this moment. And I can understand that and see that, but like classic, don't talk to the police, get a lawyer. But I can't believe like when he's like, oh, your mechanic friend is lawyered up. That's not like your mechanic friend is talking. That's like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let me get a lawyer.
Yeah, I should also do that. Again, listeners, if you ever find yourself in an interrogation room, get a lawyer. Just friendly advice. But that is the end of that storyline. Her and her dad planted the bomb. They paid the mechanic to be part of the ruse. They were trying to frame her husband so that like he wouldn't get a percentage of the company if she were to divorce him.
For a quick second, I thought Daddy wasn't going to be in on it until like Daddy also paid $30,000 to repair your 1992 Volvo or whatever it was.
Yep. So we leave that storyline behind. Grissom and Catherine. We're back with Grissom and Catherine. We learn that Rascal the cat indeed does have a staph infection, which leads them to question, could Rascal have been her cat? Maybe Rascal didn't start out his life with the family. Maybe he started his life out with Mrs. Elliot.
I'm a little surprised they can get a warrant to search the house based on this.
Yes, because the very next scene, the police are at the Trent house investigating the Trent house.
It is far more likely that these girls stole the cat during the 3 days when it was likely wandering around. There was a hole in the back door.
Right. The cats went in and out, it seemed.
Yeah. And so, like, they easily could have taken the cat and not been at the murder scene.
Right.
And the idea that they got a warrant to search their entire house without any other piece of evidence.
No other evidence.
To point towards the mom or anyone else in that house is, I think, a little bit of TV magic.
I agree. It is a bit of a stretch. But in CSI land, they get the warrant. So Catherine and Grissom are there searching for mineral oil. And then Catherine finds a pen that tests positive for blood. So
there's an important thing here that they gloss over.
Okay.
Which is that the pen has like a hole in it, like it's broken in parts, And it's supposed to be like one of those pens with like the fish or the stars that float through it when you turn it one way or the other way.
Yes.
That's the mineral oil. It's this thick, viscous, dense oil in there that things are going to float in.
Yeah.
And they don't tell the audience this.
They do not. They just showed that that the casing is broken.
But that's why it's obvious that this is the murder weapon, and why they will then continue to follow this thread is that the mineral oil is the liquid inside of that pen, and that's what was found inside the wound track. Yes. So they do a very bad job of conveying that to the audience.
They agree.
And I didn't even get it to like halfway through the next scene.
Oh.
I like figured it out in my head. I said, oh, right. Because of the floaty thing. I bet you that was
the mineral oil.
It's because they
didn't. Yeah, they didn't. They in no part in the episode did they say, "Oh, there was mineral oil in the pen."
Yeah, and then we found it in the wound. Therefore, we know this is the murder weapon.
Yeah, yeah. We go back to. There's a lot of scenes in interrogation in this episode. We go back to interrogation, but this time it's Catherine and an advocate, or who I assume is an they don't say, but who I assume is an advocate, and the two girls. And as they're talking to the girls, Jessica, the more like dominant of the two sisters, claims that her mom did it.
We know that Mrs. Elliott was killed by this pen. Can one of you tell me what happened?
Girls, do you understand what Ms. Willows is asking you?
I'll tell. No, you promised.
Jessica, in this room, the only promise you make is to tell the truth.
She didn't mean to do it. I'm sure she didn't.
Who?
Mommy.
So, look at her mom's face was so good. Kudos to that actress.
She did a good job. So we see a reenactment in which the mom is the one who stabs Mrs. Elliott. And then like the two girls run away with the cat. But this leads Catherine to giving the girls a lesson on fingerprints. So Catherine gives them a very nice, how fingerprints are left behind and how she's able to collect them. And that the fingerprint found on the pen, aka the murder weapon, doesn't belong to an adult.
Which they don't really explain, but presumably based on the size.
Yes, I would imagine that it must be due to the size of the print. They realize that it is a child's fingerprint and not a adult fingerprint. And so the younger daughter, my earlier spot, the guest star, is like, it's not my print. Not it. Didn't do it. I am not the one. So then Jessica shows her true self, I suppose.
Yeah, she's a psychopath. And normally I wouldn't judge people, but she's a fake character.
She's a fake character. Yes. Yeah, you're not diagnosing a real human being here. You're diagnosing a TV character. So this is okay.
She's on her way to being a legit serial killer.
Yes. So she puts on her true face, and we see the actual reenactment in which Mrs. Elliott wouldn't give up the cat. And so Jessica, by whatever means necessary, was going to take what she wanted. And so she killed Mrs. Elliott and took the cat.
Two things here. One, the whole Tattletales go to hell. Or
Tattletales burn in hell.
Such a great line. That could be the name of our episode. I don't know if that's Apple Podcast friendly.
It is. No, we can do hell. That's okay.
But they also don't really do a good job of explaining. It's super important that Mrs. Elliott was in this suffering from this staph infection and was extremely weak. They mentioned that it would make a person really weak earlier, and that's what allowed an 8-year-old girl to overpower her and stab her through the chest.
Stab her through the chest. Yes.
Yeah, but they don't really bring that up. It's just factually true.
Yes.
That's why the staph infection is important, other than the cat.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so then we pan over to Grissom talking to the mom, and she's obviously in shock, right? She is watching one of her children admit to murder and be pretty cold about it as well. Not just admit to murder, but be very calculating and cold about doing so. And while she's screaming for her mom, she starts, saying I want my mommy.
Which I feel like is an act.
It is an act, yes. I think that's what we're supposed to believe. Yeah, I think that's what we're supposed to believe, is that she's now putting on the, like, I'm a sad kid and I'm just scared and I just want my mom. Yeah. But Grissom, I also feel like this was inappropriate. Grissom was like, did you know?
Yeah. First off,
she's 8.
That would be a crime.
She's 8. I don't think that her mom thought that she murdered Mrs. Elliot. Like, she's an 8-year-old. Like, she's a bratty 8-year-old kid, but she's a bratty 8-year-old kid, not, so.
And then it's like her answer is like almost saying yes, but
yes, it is in a weird way.
Denial, you know what I mean? Like,
yes, because she says that she only made the promise that the girls could have a cat if Mrs. Elliot would willingly give up one of her cats, but she knew that Mrs. Elliot wouldn't, which is why she made the promise, because she was like, oh yeah, I can totally promise them a cat because Mrs. Elliot is never going to give up one of her cats, so I'll just say, yeah, you can have a cat if you can get Mrs. Elliot to give one of them up.
But like, that doesn't mean,
that doesn't justify thinking your daughter murdered her.
also the cat already has shown up at their house,
yes,
of its own volition,
yes,
and that's why they were there in the first place. So mom knows that.
Mm-hmm.
They easily could have claimed the cat after she died, and mom probably could have figured that out. Like, mama probably was already thinking like, oh, they probably just found the cat again and then kept it and then lied to me that they didn't get permission from the old lady, right? For Mrs. Elliot to keep the cat. But like, she didn't go, oh, yeah, deep down inside, I knew my daughter must have committed murder for a cat.
That's what I mean. Like, that's a pretty big leap to go from.
And why Grissom would think that was true.
That's what I mean. Like, Grissom
is very un-Grissom-like.
Like, why would you make that jump? Like, why would you? Yeah, that seemed out of character and weird. But that is the end of our episode. So, Nick, what did you think about today's episode?
In general, I like this episode.
Okay.
This was an episode where I did have to take it down a peg on the second watch. There are a few things that got to me, I think, that I kind of glossed over. We're coming off a couple lower ranking episodes for me. It may have a little boost from there, but in general, I liked it. When I watched it the second time, I realized it's not quite going to probably make it into, say, like a top 3 for me this season, but I'll put it in the. It's probably the best episode we've watched in 3 or 4 episodes. I don't really remember exactly which episodes 3 or 4 episodes 3 and 4 ago were, but it's been a while. It's at least in the positive firmly, but then I realized it does have a bunch of problems in the episode, and I think it could have been. It's another example where I was like, man, this episode was just so close to being a good episode.
Yeah,
they needed a couple little things. If this episode had some of the character stuff that was redeeming with the last few worst episodes,
yes,
because it had no good character stuff,
not at all,
it would probably make it a lot better. And then obviously I'm really big on the, like, does the path of the evidence like pan out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like pulling stuff out of your butt in this episode.
Yeah.
The it's also at the same time you get these sort of like, they keep you guessing, which was good.
Yeah.
But they didn't earn it. And that's what I kind of figured out in the second watch through, is they cheated a lot.
Yeah. So I think, similar to you, overall I enjoyed the episode. Like, it was a fun episode. I think the spot the guest stars and the other supporting cast were good. Like, it had a very good guest star lineup of characters that were, enjoyable and brought, life to the stories. I'm happy for, 2 crimes, like two separate crimes being investigated. And it passed the test of, as far as on the second watch through, I was like, oh, all right. I'm still, this isn't like a painful second watch through, which is oftentimes for me a sign of like a not great episode. Is on the second one, I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch this again. But it also just fell into a lot of what like traps that I was hoping we were getting away from, like Greg Sanders being just weird for no reason and doing riddles instead of just giving people very important results on their crimes, and Warwick again being really minimized, and as you mentioned, no character development really whatsoever. So overall, a fun episode. Definitely has its pitfalls. I'll be curious to see at the end of the season where I rank it in the scheme of everything.
So I've decided that our F, Marry, Kill version is
yes.
Play, fast forward, or rewind.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Play being like I'll watch it once, rewind being I want to watch it again, fast forward being like if you were binging this episode.
Yeah, would you skip? Would you hit the skip? Would you hit the skip button?
Next episode button.
So I would say play on this episode.
Yeah, this is a play.
I would say this is a play.
Yeah, it's a good play, but
yeah. Well, we'll see if next week does any better when we return with season 2, episode 21, Anatomy of a Lie. In the meantime, you can support us on Patreon. So if you go to patreon.com and search for Who Are You? a CSI podcast, you will find our Patreon. Feel free to join us at a CSI level 1 and support the podcast and get a shout out on the show. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Who Are You? A CSI podcast. We're also on Twitter /X and Instagram at Who Are You? CSI pod. You can also email us at whoareyoucsipod@gmail.com. And you can use any of those avenues to tell us if we missed a spot the guest star or anything else you want to really tell us about the show or the episodes. We're happy to hear it. But in the meantime, we will talk to you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.